Welcome to the Loud Whisper Takeover podcast. As you know already by now, I'm an action actress also making my own movies. And in the pursuit of making my own movies better and bigger, I'm just interviewing a lot of interesting artists, filmmakers, stunts, other action actors, so that we can gather a base of knowledge that all of you can learn from. Today I have a very special guest. Straight out of the UK, he's based in Essex. He's an action actor, a stunt. He also does mocap, motion capture, and performance capture. He had an appearance with a small role in The Witcher. And he's now coming out with his own indie short film called Jackal and Hide. Please welcome Alan Donaldson. Hi Lee, how are you doing?
I'm good, Cindy. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Super excited to talk to you today. So before we talk about Jackal and Hide, which is like your new baby that is coming fresh out of the oven, how about you tell us a little bit more about you as a stunt and an action actor? What kind of training did you do? How did you end up doing choreographed fights for screen?
So like most people who are interested in pursuing stunts, majority of stunts, which you probably know, do involve fighting and screen combat. So I did my research and looked around to see what type of providers would give you good training in various workshops, whether that be unarmed, with weapons and whatnot. And then basically built upon that to then develop into the actual stunt aspect with regards to high falls, stair falls, fire, and other things that you can do within reason when you're still training as a stunt trainee. Let's say, for example, through the British Stunt Register. But basically, most of it's come from experience with working with trained professionals at various workshops and training academies, or through just literally doing it yourself, which is where, as you know, most of the time you learn the most when you apply what you've been shown and taught by others on your own.
So you're also falling from heights and you're also putting yourself on fire? Are there other skills that you kind of master or trained in as a stunt?
So obviously stunts is very broad. There's many different type of niches and many type of standard categories, but I tend to focus mainly on wires, fighting, firearms, falling, whether that's the high fall, like I mentioned, could be 8-10 meters, for example, stair falls and whatnot. So they're the kind of main areas, but everything seems to always stem back to a form of fighting or martial art or some type of falling. Any stunt really is falling or fighting primarily, unless you, like I said, go more particular with what you need to do. Like fire, for example, which is obviously a lot more dangerous.
May I ask you a couple of questions about all what is to do with wires? Because I would absolutely love to do some fights in the air and stuff. I did a little bit of aerial circus when I was a professional dancer. So when it comes to all the wire work, where did you train or how did you get into that? Or did you literally just learn on the job?
So with regards to training, there aren't many places in the UK that offer training. There's a few independent stunt coordinators who do workshops. There's a couple other companies that do a mixture of circus aerial and wires for obviously a show reel. And I've gone with one of the independent stunt coordinators for a few sessions. But in terms of doing it myself, I wouldn't claim to have the skills or understanding of how to do the rigging, because it's a significant skill. It's a very hard thing to do, and safety is paramount, as you know, with wires. So it's not the sort of thing that me and my team would ever set up ourselves, like, for example, in the woods with trees or whatnot. And I definitely haven't done it on the job, because you have to be vetted. You can't just do it. You need to have obviously some previous experience and evidence of your experience there. It's this type of thing you can't just do.
Yeah, in the world of circus is the same thing. I did some aerial circus, like I was attached to a bungee in a harness, but the other person that was attached to me, and that was the rigger, obviously they have a whole other toolbox and knowledge and training, and they know what they're doing. I'm just attached to it and I'm dancing in the air sort of thing. But the rigger obviously had another expertise. So on top of being an action actor, being a stuntman, being a filmmaker and making your own films, you're also involved in mocap, motion capture, and performance capture. Let me know if I'm wrong here, but so motion capture is when you wear a suit and you have sort of bubbles on the suit, and then you're moving, and then they transform that into data, and then they can make a character out of it. And performance capture is a bit the same thing, but there is something about your facial expressions that is also being used. Is that right?
Yeah, the two key differences in performance capture are they capture your facial movements and also your voice. So in motion capture, it's just purely biomechanical. It's just capturing of the body's movement, the skeleton. Performance capture is facial recognition and your voice. So we're capturing your voice as well as your face.
And so how did you get into that? How did that cross your path, and how did you actually started to do castings in that field, or how did you train?
So there's a company called Mocap Vaults, and they do a lot of training at a place called Mount View in London, drama school. And they do workshops which eventually build up, if you manage to go through enough stages, to actually working in the volume and being in the suit and doing, proper scenes, pre-recorded work, group work, solo work, like monologues in the suit and being tracked and having all your data captured. So they actually do the training because a lot of actors don't understand how to cross over into that medium. So they help to facilitate that process. But I am aware of some actors or stunt performers who have managed to go into motion capture with no training whatsoever. So it generally boils down to what type of talent and transferable skills you have and what type of agent you have. Within motion capture in the UK, it's still very niche. It's still quite small relative to other areas. However, it's growing rapidly, and there are more mocap specific agents appearing, but there are still less than 5 that I'm aware of, and I have one of them, and she's very good at finding me motion capture castings and performance capture ones, some incredible ones actually. So it's a process of having an agent who will represent you, but also having some form of training, because in my opinion, it's not this type of thing you can just wing. It's a completely different form of acting. Anyone can stand in front of a green screen but still have more to interact with. But in motion capture, as you've seen, there is literally nothing. Your imagination is the only thing that's going to allow you to make that person playing you, if you're a game, for example, a character, believe that that's really that character. So if you're lacking in imagination or you're too serious as a performer, it's very difficult to pull it off, put it that way.
And so even if you're a stunt or if you were a dancer or something, would that still be a very difficult transition to make?
So I think when it comes to dancers and stunt performers, if they're only doing the movement, quite easy really, because they're not having to act, because we're not going to see or hear anything they do. We're just tracking the skeleton. So if a stunt performer, let's say they fell off a wall onto a box, we're just tracking that trajectory of that body moving and the skeleton. A dancer, we're tracking, how they're saying they're a ballet dancer and they do a plie, or they go on their points and various other movements. We're looking at that. So really they're just doing what they would normally do, but they're kind of they're just an avatar. That there's no, the audience doesn't need to see any emotion or any physicality, because that's going to be drawn on after. So you can get mocap jobs easier if you're only doing mocap. But when you want to take it seriously as performance capture, you need to be a very well-rounded actor, because you can't fake certain things. It will mess the data up, and they just have to keep correcting it. It costs them a lot of time and a lot of money. So
Right, I see. And can you clarify? So you have an agent that is also specialized in finding new jobs in that field, or are these agents just doing mocap?
my one from Reflections Talent Agency, she focuses on mocap and stunt performers only.
Right. And will we be seeing you doing this kind of things in your own work? Or is this something that you're like, no, motion capture is that's what I do for other productions, but not for my own? Or is this also part of your future sort of vision?
But yeah, with motion capture, what I'd like to do is either develop partnerships, or if I have my own capital to actually build my own volume, where then I can then expand upon the universe that's in my head, basically, to create new films and stories through motion capture. So if I can, I will develop it in that manner over time as technology improves and the cost comes down for the data, the software, the hardware, the kits. But until then, I'll just keep improving and learning about that medium through castings that have come through my agent.
So is that a medium of film that costs even more than doing a normal film? Like, would you put a zero behind it, or would you double the budget?
I'll give you an example. Each finger per frame per second costs about $50 when they're capturing data. So a couple of minutes of data capture just for a few digits on your hand can cost tens of thousands of pounds.
Wow.
So this is why people complain about games being so expensive, but the amount of money and processing power it takes to capture the data before they even transfer it and then work with it is so extensive and so detailed. It the budgets are just unbelievable. So it's not the type of thing that me and my team would be able to self fund, put it that way. Until things change, maybe the price might go down over time as it becomes more widespread. They introduce it in some more film. As you know, Planet of the Apes, the new one that's been released, it's all motion capture. But the budget for that was significant based on all the work that was required. So when it comes to short films, it's not a possible route just yet.
So in general, when you're doing stunts, because we're going to talk about Jackal and Hide as well, which is an action movie, there are a lot of fights happening in that short film. What makes your heart beat? What do you connect with these characters that fight? What is exciting about it for you?
For me, it's just the variation in people's physicality, like their body types, their physical prowess, and how they come together and obviously have to fight in those scenarios, which is what excites me, because as you know, you can never have the perfect opponent. People are always going to be different. There's going to be contrasts, and in terms of whether that you look at it from a professional standpoint or just from a general standpoint, there's always something different to watch from person to person or group to group. And that's what excites me when I bring different people together and watch them create the magic through the choreo that's in my head. And that's what excites me, because sometimes people throw in moves that you didn't think would work, or they have a certain style and type of like the way they move their body language is a bit more interesting and dynamic perhaps. And that's what excites me, because it's never the same. It's always different.
Yeah, let's talk about body types and stuff, because that's so true. We can have a character that doesn't look like a fighter, and then we can create like a scene that is fantastic because all of a sudden they transform as actors into this warrior type. So, Jackal and Hyde, you had 20 performers in total. Were the 20 of them involved in the action scenes or not?
So in one of the scenes, there are 12 stunties fighting, and in the other, there's 18. So we had nearly all of them within the two main fight scenes, but the other performers were just acting only.
What kind of body types were you working with? Did you have tall people, short people, skinny people?
Yeah, we had.
Were
There was a
curvy? I don't know.
Yeah, we had, obviously, it's a mixture of men and women, and the majority of the women were very petite and slender. There was one very tall girl who's over 6 foot, but the rest of the men really varied. You've got your typical 5'6" to 5'9" type of lean man, or then you've got your 6 foot plus big guys, and then just your more normal type of men and women. It was just such a contrast of physiques. So, but the majority of people were on the smaller side opposed to the larger side, I'd say.
And do you take their body type into consideration, not just when you're choreographing, but also when you're developing these characters? Would you go with, okay, you are petite, and so you're going to kind of, I'm going to give you the role of somebody that can't fight? Or do you like to have a plot twist where the most petite becomes extremely powerful? Or how did you play with these physicalities when it comes to the development of character and the storyline?
Not everyone who was on the film I'd actually worked with before, but the majority of them I had. So I already had in mind what type of role I thought they could play in character. But the few that were wild cards and ones I vetted later on in the casting process, I flipped it. Some of them, I made them stronger than they would have probably looked like. And then it was also the vice versa of that. We put in scenes and elements where we assumed someone was dead, but then we hyped it up in a way that, how the bad guy never dies? If you're watching a film and you think to yourself, how comes this guy just won't die? Like, how many more times do I have to stab him, punch him, kick him, shoot him? So we had a couple of scenarios where we did that just for the kind of comedy factor. And then other points where you'd think that person, because of their size and stature, should be slow and should be not so dynamic. They were incredibly, fast and agile, and were really tough to kill. So we didn't always do the stereotype for every character. We did mix it up a lot just to try and show the audience versatility of the actors and stunt performers, but also just to not make it so predictable.
I'd love to talk to you about the casting process, because you said you worked with people that you knew already, that you had already worked with, and then there are some new people that came on board. What was your casting process? Did you cast them in person? Were there self-tapes involved? Did they have to come to a rehearsal? Like, what were your criterias of how you chose the right cast? Tell us more.
The first things first, like I think in any scenario when you interview someone, I did Zoom meetings and got to know the person first, because even through a computer or a phone, you can still get a feel for the type of person they are just by communicating face to face. So I did that first. They would also send me any content they have, like show reels and whatnot, which I can review to kind of assess their ability, which then I could obviously imagine where I see them in the film and scenes. After that, when I was happy with my selections, they then came to 3 separate rehearsals where we paired them up with people I believed they'd be suitable with, and then I assessed them. And then from that, we built upon their routines and their character and their roles. From that point onwards, we had 4 rehearsals in total. Three were not on location, and 1 was a mini rehearsal on location on the first day. So that's kind of the process I went through. And it seemed to work very well.
You had 4 rehearsals in total for the fighting scenes?
4 rehearsals in total for all of it, yeah. Because obviously the 12 versus 6 was an incredibly complex piece of work to put together. So that took some time. Plus we had to rehearse the dialogue scenes as well at the same time. 4
rehearsals doesn't seem very much.
No, it's not. But we only had 6 weeks to prepare. So
wow.
from pitching, I pitched my idea and concept to the director end of January, and then we had all of February and part into March to prepare and rehearse, and then we shot in mid-March. So time was of the essence because, as you know, usually from April, May in the TV and film world, people start getting busy and working, and the directors were unavailable in April, so we had to really push it with a tight schedule.
I think that's also very inspirational because in January, you pitch your idea. February, March, make it happen. You go into post-production. Right now, at the time of recording this episode, it's the month of May, and you're already starting festival season. And I think it also gives a lot of hope to artists in terms of, well, once you get the ball rolling, in a few months' time, you can make something happen.
Yeah, of course. And that's, obviously, it has been stressful at times, and it's a lot of pressure and a lot of work. But ultimately, we've created the proof of concept, and with the correct time management and project management, you'd be surprised what can be achieved. And when a team support one another, and this is a very large team as well, amazing things happen. And there's been a lot of swift work done, very good work, and we're just showing people that stop talking about things and just do it. I could have been talking about my idea for months and never taken off the ground. We were given opportunity. The directors believed in my script and me as an actor and a person who can manage people and projects, and we just went with it. Because if we didn't do it, you have to remember people's availability changes all the time. As a performer, you have to take jobs where they can come. If so, because you might get work again for a while. So I was also pushing to do it as soon as possible to make sure I didn't lose my performers. Because once I made my final selections, that was my team. I didn't want to make any more adjustments to the cast.
I want you to clarify, if possible, the fact that you said that you had a proof of concept. Did you have a proof of concept to pitch it to the directors? And if so, what was it? Or
Oh, no,
actually
sorry,
this
sorry.
short
No,
film?
this is the
A
short. Yeah,
proof of
sorry. Yeah. This short film is our proof of concept to other directors who I've spoken to who are interested in working with us on further projects. So, because we as a team and me as an individual, I wanted this proof of concept to, one, get interest with other directors for developing other projects, and two, to get investment to expand and develop other script ideas. So that's why we did it in that aspect.
So this is a proof of concept to show, look, this is what I can do, but it's not to turn this particular idea into a feature film. It's more a proof of concept to find fundings to fund other scripts.
Yeah, we're open to developing this into a feature film or perhaps a TV series. However, we have more projects, particularly period based and futuristic in the, let's say, dystopian style concepts that we want to work upon more. So I wanted to develop this film to show people what I can do as a producer, a writer, an actor, a stunt performer, and whatnot within this time frame. If I can do this with this little time and this little funding, what could I do with more money and more time and more preparation? So that's the spin we have. We believe that people will recognize us and give us credibility for not just a job well done, but a job done fantastically to one of the highest standards for such a short period of time to work on it.
So you worked with a budget of £4,000, is that correct?
Well, initially it was 2,000, and that was based on location, directors' expenses, catering, because obviously I was in charge of catering as well. I was in charge of locations in terms of getting, props and other things and whatnot. But luckily we got stuff through friends and family and connections. So originally it was £2,000, which was self-funded for all the performers. And then unfortunately, like anything, things go over budget, despite how much you plan. And then that's mainly from post-production. We had unexpected costs, which we didn't plan for. So that's why it's doubled. But we still have made this with very little money, really.
And so basically the money that you got, the 4K, came from people investing in themselves and in this project because everybody wants to make the most of it. Okay.
Yeah, imagine. So the way I pitched it to the performers was, some people need more experience than others. Some people need a top up on their show reel. Some people need some professional credits on IMDb. So I said, you have a choice here. You can spend £100 and cover your expenses for rehearsals and traveling to location. And you can be part of a film, a new concept, and walk away with some very good contacts, experience, and reels. Or you can spend 3-4 times that and not really get anything from it if you go elsewhere. That's what I pitched to them. All in all, I would estimate everyone probably spent about £200 each. Obviously, the producers, including myself, we've invested a bit more, and we do have a crowdfund page to top up some of the shortage we had after the filming. But prior to filming, we paid for it all ourselves, all the performers. The crew did not pay towards it, but the crew took an agreement on expenses only, or basing it on the love of being part of a passion project.
Love it. That's really fantastic. And what are you doing in regards to the budget for distribution now to pay for film festivals and all that sort of things? Are you going to self-fund that as well, or are you looking for particular fundings, applying for grants?
Self-funding for the moment. If I think that more money is needed, I'll explore grants and whatnot. But we're trying not to overdo it. We're being very particular in who we select and who we contact and where we showcase it. So obviously this is still all new territory. So we will learn from it. If perhaps we'd missed a few or we should have done less, but I'm trying to go for less rather than more for the time being.
So how do you select the film festivals where you're submitting your work? What are your criteria?
So mainly because it's all action, of course, any action related film festival. And then ones that highlight specialist skills, highlighting things like Foley or VFX. I've been looking into ones that highlight those skill sets for best picture or best sound and whatnot. And it's all on either my own research or my team's recommendations for ones they have either previously used or they're aware of. Because ultimately, as you know, you've got probably friends in the circle that they've been involved in TV pilots or short films or whatnot, and the people involved submit to various film festivals, and we all tend to be aware of what the right ones are for our criteria. So I've learned of ones through just other performers that I know of being part of that screening or that showcasing. So I've obviously come across various ones over the years anyway. Again, like I mentioned with the directors who also submit regularly to for their own work, they've given me an extensive list also.
Yeah, it is very important because I was talking to a friend. He came on the podcast actually, and his first short film, he was like, Cindy, I overdid it so much. I would never spend the amount of money that I spent on film festivals ever again, but I didn't have a strategy, but I had to go through it and learn.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Ultimately, I think like anything in life, less is more. It's quality, not quantity. If your work is good enough and people like it, it will get its own traction and build its own momentum, not just through the film festivals, but through social media, viral exposure, and sometimes just organic exposure elsewhere. So that's why I've just pinpointed a few particular ones, and I'm happy with those for now because they're the ones I want to really, hopefully, enjoy our film.
And then I would love to talk to you about VFX. So for my short film, it's a sci-fi, and it was my very first time working with a real proper VFX specialist. So obviously it's a sci-fi, so we're sort of in a dystopian world, and we needed to create that world. But for you, VFX in Jackal and Hide needed to be added because you had fighting scenes with blood and stuff. So tell us more about your creative process around that, from makeup to VFX.
Yeah, so we had a really talented makeup artist and prosthetics person called Rebecca Wheeler, and she was fantastic with the rigging. We had one scene where someone was shot and the blood was being pumped out through the trousers. So she did some rigging on certain people and also prosthetics on others. There's so many deaths and so many slashing of knives and various hits. It's impossible for one person only to rig that many people. So we already foresaw that before we filmed, and we said what we'll do is we'll use. Fun enough that the person doing the VFX was also our sound operator. He was doing sound because he's quite a talented man, really. He said, "Yeah, I'll help you after, and we'll fill in the gaps where there should be blood or there's continuity issues, perhaps. So I'll clean that up and things like that." So we knew previously with the shot list what we had to add in. So we'd already discussed that, and now he's doing that. But it's not a great deal because most of the makeup is covered, or the rigging. It's just a few little areas where if there's a viewer who's quite got an eagle eye for certain things, if, like I said, for example, where someone gets stabbed and then the knife is withdrawn and there's no blood, we have to fix that. So there's little things like that.
And may I ask as well, because for our VFX artist, so for a big part of the process, she was already involved from pre-production. But then there were a couple of shots that didn't come out the way we wanted. And in post-production, we wanted her to change stuff. But because you need a lot of equipment or softwares or whatever, sometimes it's not possible because there is no budget, because the camera is moving. And so the VFX we wanted, we couldn't do it because the way it was shot just wasn't working. Was there anything that you had to take into account, knowing that you were going to do VFX, knowing you were going to add blood? Was there a way that you had to film it to make sure that that was possible and realistic to do it?
No, we didn't have to do that. We was quite covered. It was just a case of just waiting to see how the footage looked before we decided what to add. But we were always checking the monitors regularly. Even though I was performing, I was constantly monitoring the monitors as well as getting people to do that to make sure that there was less work for the VFX artist to do after. So we just made sure that the DOP and the other camera operator got what we wanted. Because again, we only had 3 days to shoot this, by the way, and that is a lot to fit in 3 days. So we couldn't afford to make mistakes and essentially ask the VFX artist to do more work, because each segment that he works on takes a day. It's a lot of work for such a little small sequence or timestamp. So we were fortunate that we didn't have to do that.
And how long is Jackal and Hide in total?
It's just under 13 minutes.
Awesome. Maybe talk to us about what inspired the story as well, because one of the things from what I've seen of the trailer, I'm really blown away by the location. But maybe before we talk location, can you talk to us about what inspired the story and also where it happens?
Yeah, so in my head for a long time, I've had this story where I'm a thug. Well, I'm a rival gang member to another family, and it was kind of showing vulnerability to a character who's normally very hard and invincible and untouchable. And I really wanted to bring in a woman to that dynamic, my on-screen wife, and essentially set up a huge fight scene because, I'm inspired by all types of fighting and action films. The Raid is one of them that we drew reference from. I don't know if you've seen The Raid. It's fantastic fighting film, Indonesian. And I'd had this cooking in my head for a long time that I wanted to see a strong character in a vulnerable, weak position who was then being weakened by torture, humiliation, and then having his wife or loved one close to him, so showing more emotion. But then on the flip side, showing the spin of him then getting back into control, but still being presented with obstacles because we wanted to make it, and I always wanted to make it not an easy escape because it's essentially an escape film. The whole process is myself, my wife, and my team breaking in to help us escape this compound, this holding place where these thugs have been keeping us hostage, basically. And I've always wanted to do a massive fight sequence, but a lot of the time when I've been cast or been put forward for battle scenes, it's always period. And I really wanted to do a modern fight, like a street fight with baseball bats, knives, fists, kicking, anything you can get your hands on type of thing. And that's where it came from. Obviously, I had all the pieces in my head. And when I spoke to Charlie, the co-writer, he just kind of refined and created the world of Jackal and Hide because I didn't have character names or rival names in my head. I just had the concept of what I wanted to do. And then he took that and then created, like I said, that world of the Jackal. Well, it's the Jackal and Aldersons. The Aldersons are the good guys, which is my team. Jackals are the bad guys, sorry. And he helped to create that.
Question about your writer: is your writer like an action writer, or is he just a writer and then you visualize the fights in there? Like, what was your creative process?
Yeah, so obviously, the writer's more of he has been involved in some action films, but primarily he does period more so and less action, more just soft acting, should we say. So that's where I was bringing into the table the fighting, the aggression, the violence, and he was just writing it because he's not a stunt performer. He's not a stunt trainee. He is an actor and a writer. So he helped to add in my background and love of action and fighting and incorporate what he'd done in a few other short films into this.
Right. So it's been like a quite a collaborative process.
Oh, yeah, very collaborative. Yeah. And ultimately, the pair of us, we combined our skills and experience from different genres of acting and work to create this, to not overdo it on the fighting or to not overdo it on the acting. We wanted a perfect blend. Initially, he wanted to write it in an acting only manner. He didn't want to put stunts and action in it. But I said, no, we must combine it because I wanted to showcase everyone's abilities in both aspects, both acting and stunts. And that's why we combined it, because some people would say it's too ambitious to have the acting part and the stunts. You should have just done a stunt film. But the way I see it, if we'd just done acting or we'd just done fighting stunts, those would have just been a fight reel or a normal acting show reel. And that's not a film. A film has multiple layers and dimensions. And that's where we've got the contrast where you will see within the 5 scenes of the acting, the action, back to the stunts, back to the acting, stunts and acting at the same time. It's what you would see in a normal feature film. So And that's where we collaborated and agreed to try and merge the two perfectly and seamlessly to create a more of a spectacle for everyone to watch. Because ultimately, as you know, some people aren't into action. And if they're just watching a film that's just fighting, fighting, fighting and no dialogue, they can get bored maybe. So we wanted to reel in other people, a different audience who can maybe be captivated and enticed by the acting ability with the emotion and the drama and the love between myself and my wife, and then also be amazed and astounded by the level of stunts and incredible makeup that's been applied to it.
And what about your director? You found a director. Was he an action director?
Nick is his name. He's a director based in Brighton, and he wasn't actually the director on this. He was the DOP. So him and his colleague Andy, they flip roles between different projects. So they're both DOP and director, the pair of them. So for this one, Nick was the DOP and Andy was the director. They tend to focus more on adverts and other short films and TV series, but it's not. They've done a couple action films, but not many, and they've never done anything on this scale. So when I pitched to them and they read the script, they were very excited because just like for ourselves as performers, this was an opportunity for them to upskill and level up and add to their portfolio and life experience. And I think that's why they were equally just as interested, because they wanted a challenge and they wanted to do something different. And that's what they were presented, and that's what they did, because we delivered on what we promised. I pitched it to them in a way. I said, you can keep doing the same things, or maybe you can try something new and see what comes from it. And luckily they bought into my proposal and they did a fantastic job.
And so how did you find a way to work together? Because obviously there is a piece of choreography that needs to be made. There is a story that needs to be told, but then there is also a big collaboration between the movement of the camera and how you're going to actually film a fighting scene, which is extremely important to make it work. What was your creative process in choreographing the camera in, knowing that obviously the DOP and the director and people didn't have a massive background yet in that arena? Like, how did you work together to figure that out?
Well, I asked them, I said to them, I imagine when we did the rehearsals, I said, I imagine this is how you're going to film from these positions, these angles and frames and whatnot. So we would rehearse, I'd send it to them and they'd say, yeah, that looks good. But maybe can you film it that way for us or at that speed so we can analyze there better? And then we just kept bouncing back and forth with previous of our work and then regular meetings on Zoom to iron things out. So when we did the recce, myself and the AD, and again we took photos and videos of the spaces that I wanted to use different scenes, then we were able to pre-plan how that would work on the day. Now, of course, more setups were required than anticipated, but because we'd already done some pre-work and experimenting, it did speed up the process for ourselves and the director and DOP.
There was a huge amount of choreography that was already done, camera choreography that was already done in rehearsals.
Yeah, and luckily, quite a few of the team, the fighters, the stunties, some of them are really good camera operators themselves in their own right, and they're very good at editing as well, and they just understand how to film. So that was very helpful for the DOP in particular, because he wasn't just watching someone just standing there with a phone, not really know what to do. They knew how to move in to the fight, how to move with the characters, and just basically sell it better. So then they could either take that and tweak it or critique it and then think about how they would do it differently. So there was a lot of pre-work, which ultimately helped the process for everyone. In an ideal scenario, we would have done extra rehearsals at the location, but the time and money just wasn't there to do further days.
Can you tell us more about the location? Because I find the location really breathtaking. Both the lights that you got in there, I don't know if it was natural light or if you're, added more light, but also the location itself, there is something so unique about it. How did you find it? Can you tell us a little bit more of where it is?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I have a brother-in-law who's got a lot of contacts within Hertfordshire and Hemel Hempstead. And he was our location manager and he was also our armourer, Jason Jackal. And I'd asked him, I said, look, I'm looking for a location. Have you ever seen the film Snatch? It's a British gangster film. It's a well-known action gangster film, British one. And There's a famous part in it with a pig farm. And this gangster, he basically takes people there to get beaten up and he feeds them to the pigs, basically. And I really wanted something that was really run down and derelict and the sort of place that it's just dirty and full of rough people who would use it as a hangout. So my brother-in-law said, look, there's a disused cow farm that I have contacts with, the owner in Hemel Hempstead. I'm more than happy to ask him if you can hire it and then you can use it. And we went and did the recce, fell in love with the location because there's just so many cool spots to film in, different barns, old caravans, broken down buildings. Just the variety of rooms and spaces was significant. Some with natural light, some with not. And yeah, we managed to secure that for a fraction of what it's really worth, to be honest, because if Netflix or Amazon had gone there, they would have been paying so much money comparison to what we did. So we were lucky that we had an exclusive location that's never been used before for that type of work. It was all of ours. Like I said, it was an entire farm. It was very large premises and we had full reign of what we wanted to do with it. So it was great. No one in this country has used that location. And so anyone watching this film and you're looking at the spaces we filmed in, it's completely unique and never been seen before. So that's another USP for us.
Oh yeah, definitely use it as your unique selling point, because that was the first thing I saw, in the trailer. I was like, what is that location? It's like freaking fantastic.
Yeah, you've got to get the location right. And this one really ticked the boxes. It's exactly what I'd imagined in my head. And it's so strange in life sometimes when you imagine something and then you find something that's pretty much what you imagined and it exists. I couldn't believe it. It was just amazing. And we managed to have that location for 3 days. It was just fantastic. The weather was really good, which was great, that because a lot of the spaces we used were open or we had to deal with the wind blowing through and whatnot. But we got really lucky, but we're now fortunate because of my brother-in-law. We have other locations for other type of filming within essentially a 200-mile radius. So there's more to come with what people haven't seen before, put it that way.
Amazing. You also worked with weapons and you said you had an armorer. Can you tell us a little bit more about what an armorer does and what you actually need, also in regards to safety when you use weapons on a set?
Yes, obviously, any firearms that are on set, whether they're blank firing or not, they must be handled at all times by an armorer and only used in exchange with the person who's been selected and is qualified or experienced to hold and handle them. So Dale, one of our co-producers and one of the main performers, he was given the blank firing handgun by the armorer. And then obviously the safety briefing was done prior to explain to everyone, set, crew and cast, of the procedure for using the firearm, where people should be, where they should not be standing. No one is to obviously touch the gun or handle the gun apart from the armorer and the performer themselves. This is the key thing. There cannot be an exchange of hands under any circumstances with any other person. So it's just literally the two people who handle that gun, and that's that. And like I mentioned, they were blank bullets.
And is that international law or is that specific to the UK?
So internationally, it varies. Obviously, they have their different rules and policies in place in health and safety in different countries. The UK has very strict ones, and that's probably why, touch wood, we have not had a single incident in the TV and film industry since firearms have been used on set. Now, we still notorious in the UK don't use guns very often.
And where will we be able to actually see Jackal and Hide? Are you going to organize also private screenings, or are you just focused on?
No, we'll be doing private screenings as well. So we're going to do one in Brighton because that's where the director and DOP are from, and we would like to do one in Essex and one in London.
You also told me that there was a loud whisper that had been screaming at you for about 5 years, with, I guess, the seed of this idea. What was the moment where you said, I have to make it, and it's now?
After I had a conversation with a person who makes showreels for a living, when he told me that my showreel idea was too ambitious and not possible to do. So I thought to myself, I need to showcase myself as an actor and a stunt performer in the best way I know how. And that's not by being capped or being held back by someone who doesn't believe in my vision or uh, doesn't allocate the time or effort based on the budget. So the best thing to do is to do it myself. If I want to create the ultimate show reel for myself, I will make my own film. And that's exactly what I did. So that was the pinnacle moment, because I just had enough of talking to people who always said, no, it's too ambitious, or it can't be done, or you should just stick to what everyone else does. And I certainly don't do that.
And that is so important, because me as well as an artist, I've been told quite a few times, simply it's too ambitious. But people that are, saying it's too ambitious, is just that what they're saying is, I don't have the solution for you. I am not that solution orientated to make it happen.
Or sometimes they just don't have that same passion and drive because they're in a different position. Obviously the director and DOP shared the same passion and excitement for my project, so these were the right people to collaborate with. Other times, as you may have met people that they're just not the right people to collaborate with, that you don't have that shared vision, or they don't want it enough, because many people talk about how they want to succeed in life or in their career, but they don't actually try hard enough. They just coast and they hope that luck will come to them. But as you know, not sound cliche, you must always create your own luck.
Absolutely. So true.
Yeah.
And so you are somebody that you have taken your own project off the ground. You have also dipped your toes in different sort of fields. What has been your drive throughout your career?
If you have a dream, you have to pursue it. The moment you stop dreaming is the moment, in my opinion, you live an unhappy lifestyle. I certainly want to live a life that's fulfilling, educational. I've never stopped learning, and ultimately chasing the dream. There's the child that was in me is still there. I've kept that child alive. The artist, the creative. He wants to succeed in different mediums and different areas of work, and he'll do anything he can to achieve that. Any naysayers that come up, they're just a passing distraction. When you know in your heart and your head what your potential is, you're like a wrecking ball. So you just keep going, and that's what keeps me going. I obviously have a child. He's 3.5 years old, a little boy, and he is obviously, he gave me a massive boost when he was born to be more successful, because I want him to look up to me and be inspired and motivated to chase his dreams as well. But let's say I didn't have a child. For me, I will never take no for an answer. So it doesn't matter what career I work in, what role I have, what position I'm in. I will always find a way to pivot and make it work. And that's how you have to be in life to be successful. If you accept people's limitations and what they say you can and can't do, well, you will stay in one place, or you will regress. If you want to succeed and be truly successful in your own right, it doesn't have to be fame. You don't need to be rich. But if you're happy in what you're doing, you must keep doing what you love. And that's what being thick-skinned is.
You said you'd never stop learning. What are you learning at the moment? Or, well, what will you start learning next?
So I'm currently learning, or have been the last few weeks, learning about Foley, sound composing, sound mixing, and VFX. So these are all new things I've had to learn about. I've had to look for these people. I've had to check over their work. I've had to negotiate with them what type of work they'll be doing at what price. Now I understand more of the process of their work themselves. So I've learned about 4 different types of post-production skill sets within the last month. And moving forward, now I'm learning about the process of submitting to film festivals and podcasts and promotion through online and physical platforms, newspapers, magazines, like I mentioned, podcasts. Like it's now the promos, the marketing, it's the PR. These are some things I've done in other areas or other industries, but within the TV and film world, it's still different. So this is what I love about it, because I never stop learning. If if you just want to be an actor, fair enough. If you just want to be a stunt performer, fair enough. But for me, the way I see it, if you truly love what you do, you want to know everything and anything you can about that industry. And that's what I've been doing since I started this film.
Where can we find out more about you, your work, and then obviously follow what's going to happen with Jackal and Hide?
So Jackal and Hide has its own TikTok and Instagram account, which you can follow, Jackal and Hide. For me personally, I have my own website, which is just my name, my full name.com, leealandonaldson.com. Obviously, there's more information on me on IMDb and my personal spotlight. Jackal and Hide itself, once we have released it, we're working on making a website just for Jackal and Hide. So there'll be everything on there in terms of more behind the scenes stuff, the process, the team. The film won't be there though, because one of the requirements for the film festivals is you're not allowed to have it elsewhere.
Yeah.
So we won't be able to have that live on the internet in that aspect for a while. But there will be lots of trailers and lots of other parts of the film that can be allowed that are on there.
Amazing. I'll make sure that I put all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Lee, for all the inspiration.
Thank you. That's a pleasure. Thank you.
And wishing you all the best. Wishing you all the best with Jackal and Hide, and also it as a proof of concept to go further and make your dreams even bigger and better.